the Allendale Neighborhood Association, the Crestview Neighborhood Association, the Brentwood Neighborhood Association, and the Austinites for Fair Taxes. And Austinites for Fair Taxes has a, is it a website or a Facebook page? Facebook page, and it's Austinites for Fair Taxes. And they have the city's newly released report, freshly released today, on tax appraisals, which we're going to hear about tonight. So you can access that on the Austinite for Fair Taxes Facebook page. I also want to really thank the Travis Central Appraisal District. Many of their staff are here tonight, and if you wouldn't mind just waving your hand so people can see who you all are. If any of you have specific issues about your appraisal that you want to talk directly to an appraisal district representative about, they're here in force to help answer your questions. And we would just ask that you take them out in the hallway so we can continue our conversation and not yell. Because we know this is a very emotional issue. You hardly get more personal than people's homes. And so that's why this forum is so important, and we really appreciate you all for being here, and especially appreciate all of the speakers. The first person we're going to hear from tonight is Leigh Murrin, who's the representative from Real Values for Texas. And they're an organization that started just under 2 years ago, and I think really helped to crystallize the issue about the inequity in the appraisal process. So I'm going to have Leigh give just a very quick little update about the work, because they're working around the state. They are a statewide organization. They've been working with groups in cities all around the state, and she's going to give a brief update, and then we're going to view their video, which really does a great job of encapsulating this process, and we'll take it from there.
Hi everybody, thanks for being here. My name is Leigh. I'm with Real Values for Texas. We're a statewide organization made up of homeowners and community groups who are concerned about the inequities that come with home appraisals. The biggest problem that we're fighting right now is that commercial property owners receive a far larger discount than homeowners do, and that's because of the way that the laws are written here in Texas. Our three main goals to change that are to make sure that the true market value is really what our appraisals are based on. The way the law is written, it's supposed to be based on market value, but because of some loopholes in the current law, it's a lot easier for commercial property owners to protest their taxes and receive a large discount. Homeowners can also protest, but the available tools, the resources, and attorney fees, let's be honest, often hinder just how much they can dig in and do the groundwork. So our goal is not only true market value, but we also want to require that commercial property owners have to disclose their sales price. Reason being is that when homeowners buy, they have something called the MLS that shows how much a house sells for, and real estate agents often sell that to the appraisal districts for different folks to look at to review sales prices. So it's somewhat voluntary, somewhat not voluntary, but it's not required to disclose sales price here in Texas, so there's nothing like that for commercial property owners. And we want to make it so that there is something that there's actually comparables available. Right now, that basically when you go to a protest, you're allowed to use a property that's considered a comparable to show that your property was appraised for too much. Well, commercial property owners don't have as many options, so often, 6 months ago, they're a property that maybe has nothing to do with their own property that they can compare it to. An example of this is like an HEB comparing themselves to a movie theater, or a large hotel comparing themselves to an HEB, right? And lastly, the last thing that we want to do is close those small loopholes that also make it easier. Right now, counties are not allowed to be awarded attorney fees when they actually win a protest case. Sorry, but these large property owners are, as well as homeowners. But we think that it should be so that the county should also receive that award as well, just to make it a fair playing field. We're, like I said, across the state. We mainly focus on cities including Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, El Paso, and Houston. And we've been doing a lot of work to bring light to this issue, educate our neighbors about what's happening. We've gotten a lot of homeowners associations involved. We've gotten a lot of community groups that service low-income folks as well as middle class, as well as upper class. So everyone is really concerned about this issue. The main thing that we've been doing of recent is to push for a bill that would encompass a lot of the reforms that the three main points that we point out that would reform the whole system. Unfortunately, this legislative session, nothing is going to come out that truly reforms property tax appraisals. There was one bill introduced by Senator Ellis, Senate Bill 1084, however, it did not even get out of the Senate Finance Committee. The reason I'm bringing that up is because it's so important that you get involved, that you use your voice to talk to the legislature. Now, we're almost out of legislative session right now, so the other way to get involved is locally. Locally, we're working to make sure that city councils, counties, school boards are aware of this issue and pass resolutions in support of comprehensive reform. So far, we've gotten El Paso County, City, Houston ISD, Houston Community College, and I believe Travis County and Austin did it at one point a while ago, and I think there may be some support right now as well. We just haven't asked for any resolution. So there has been a lot done. The one other thing I want to bring up before we go to the video is that the other thing that we're looking into is Waco actually in 2012 now and from there on actually includes a provision in any contract that they do now that says that if you protest your taxes and you have a tax abatement and it's not your protest, you're not paying your full property taxes, that they have the right to take back things like that, tax abatement and different things like that. So we encourage folks to look into clawback laws as well. I know that was rushed. I just wanted to say a lot in a short amount of time, but let's go through the video because again, it does comprehensively what we do and what we work on.
We're going to dim the lights just briefly for the video.
Whoops. Maybe. Yeah.
Hey Texas, we need to talk. Homeowners are carrying an unfair tax burden of over $1 billion every single year. And guess what? We know what the problem is and how to fix it. 2 words, property tax. Hey, wake up. Property taxes are actually a pretty big deal. It's how we support public schools, libraries, parks, emergency services, community colleges, and public hospitals. On the surface, property taxes seem to be pretty fair since they're based on the value of our property. Those who own expensive properties pay more, and those who own more modest properties pay less. At least that's how it's supposed to work. In reality, big commercial property owners pay taxes on just a fraction of their property value, leaving homeowners to make up the difference. The system is rigged. Here's how. When we regular homeowners get our property tax bill, we write a check, or we pay our property taxes along with our mortgage each month. If there's an error in the appraisal, there's a process to appeal. But these appeals are usually pretty small, and most people don't use lawyers. But for big commercial property owners, like the owners of these big skyscrapers, it's very different. Unlike regular homeowners, large commercial property owners can and often do devote a lot of resources to driving their property tax bill lower and lower and lower. The owners, well really their lawyers, argue that their building should be appraised for much less than their actual value on the open market, often far less than what they paid for them and far less than what they'd sell them for. Let's look at an example. In Houston, this building was purchased in 2011 for $340 million. That same year, it was initially valued by the appraisal district at just $238 million. But that wasn't quite low enough. The owner protested this valuation and got it lowered down even further to $191.5 million. This happens with building after building after building. And then, some building owners sue to lower their values even further. 2 sample studies have found that commercial property owners pay taxes on only about 60% of their value, which means about a 40% discount. When commercial property owners don't pay their fair share, that means two things. First, homeowners often have to make up the difference. And second, frustration about carrying an unfair tax burden erodes public support for quality local services like libraries, police, and fire departments, and the good schools we all want and need. And when things hurt our kids, our communities, that's personal. Texans deserve a fair system that doesn't force homeowners to pay more while big property owners get away with shirking their responsibility to our communities. So how can we make this happen? For the first time ever, homeowners, parents, community leaders, and elected officials are uniting to show lawmakers in Austin that it's time to change the law so that big property owners pay their fair share and stop driving down the quality of life for all of us. Those are real values. Texas values. To learn more about real values for Texas and how you can help make them happen, visit realvaluesfortexas.org.
I always think that's a helpful context to start these discussions with because it just explains succinctly what's been happening with the appraisal process over the last few years. And we're going to get some very hot off the presses updates here tonight from the mayor and council members. But we also have some legislative updates. And we did hear from Senator Kirk Watson, who is not able to be here because he's in the legislative session right now. But he sent a couple of updates. And I'm just going to read very briefly from his updates. And then we're going to hear from the person who I think is one of the most knowledgeable experts about tax and fiscal policy in Texas, and that's Dick Levine, so he'll be speaking next. But from Senator Watson, he wrote, "Affordability in Austin has been a top priority for me this session, and I've made some real progress, even in the face of some powerful special interests that are trying to maintain the status quo. 2 weeks ago, the Texas Senate approved my legislation that would allow cities, counties, and other local governments to provide a flat dollar property tax exemption for homesteads. Austin and Travis County have long advocated for an alternative to the percentage-based homestead exemption, and we're closer than ever to providing that option. The flat dollar option is an important tool for cities and counties to direct property tax relief at the homeowners who need it most. I'm hopeful that will soon be an option for Austin and other communities." And then we got an update from Representative Eddie Rodriguez, who's sponsoring and carrying the senator's legislation in the House. And he said today, Tuesday, he laid out Senator Watson's SB 279 in the House Ways and Means Committee that would allow for that flat tax exemption. So hopefully we'll hear a little bit more from Dick about what came out of that committee meeting. And finally, Senator Watson also said, quote, "I filed a bill aimed at closing the equal and uniform loophole that many commercial property owners have exploited to drive down their appraisals." That's part of what we just heard in the video. And he said the equal and uniform bill that has now been sent to Governor Abbott is by definition a compromise. It's not perfect and doesn't completely solve the problem, but it's a marked improvement upon the status quo. So I'm going to happily introduce Dick Levine to give us more of an update about what's happening at the legislature and what, if any, progress we might hope to see come out of this legislative session. Dick Levine from the Center for Texas for Public Policy Priorities.
Thank you, Brigid. My name's Dick Levine. I work at the Center for Public Policy Priorities, which is a nonprofit that's concerned about the welfare of low and moderate income Texas families. And what I do is look at the revenue side, because you can't take care of public schools and higher education, health and human services, and roads, and everything else if you don't have the money. So I'm very concerned about taxes and revenue. I am also chairman of the board of directors of the Travis Central Appraisal District. So I'm really here in both roles. But what I want to take a minute to do is to talk about what's happening in the legislature. I'm very interested in providing local government, cities and counties and the special districts, the option of having a flat dollar amount homestead exemption. And I think it's very clear what the advantage is, which is if we could have, for instance, a $50,000 exemption, that would help out a family that lives in a $150,000 home a lot more than a family that lives in $1 million home. Right now, the only option open to the city is a percentage exemption, and in fact, Travis County does have and has had, since it was made available actually, a 20% exemption, but under this bill, they could transition out of that to a flat dollar amount if they wanted to. The senator's bill passed the Senate 31-0, came over to the House, it had its hearing in Ways and Means this morning, and it was tough. It was very tough. The first witness was the representative of the Texas Taxpayers and Research Association, which is all the very largest multinational companies doing business in Texas, and he was against the bill. They had asked that the homestead exemption would be limited to roughly the same amount of the homestead exemption that can be given now, distributed differently among families, but the total amount not be any greater, because they are afraid that, especially in a rural county, that the local government would just boost up the homestead exemption so high that only business would be paying taxes. So we took care of that with a proposed amendment on Friday. Come back Monday morning, they're not satisfied with that. They want a much lower cap, maybe $25,000, which would help, but is half of what I was just using as an example. And then his testimony was, even if that was done, they'd be against the bill. So just to give you an idea, that's what the fight is about. I mean, as Leigh in the video showed you, is from our point of view, we pay more because they pay less. From their point of view, it's the other way around. They're afraid if we pay less, they'll have to pay more. So that's what we're facing. We worked all afternoon trying to at least satisfy the objections were raised in committee, and we're hopeful that we can do that, and the committee, time's short, so everything's being, hour by hour counts. But we're hoping it will be voted out of the Ways and Means Committee tomorrow. Then it goes to the Calendars Committee that controls whether a bill actually gets to the House floor to be voted on. Representative Eddie Rodriguez is on calendars, but it's a very difficult process and nothing that's out in the open. So if we do get it out of Ways and Means tomorrow, that'll be the next hurdle. Then if we can get it to the House floor, it involves not just a bill, but a joint resolution. In other words, a constitutional amendment. Because, actually, it's because in the Constitution it guarantees that all property taxation will be equal and uniform. An exemption is a violation of equal and uniform, so it requires an amendment to the Constitution, which we do every other day. But the big problem is, before it gets sent to the voters, it requires a 2/3 vote. So there's 150 House members. We will have to get 100 out of those 150 to vote for it. So it's moving, but it's going to be a tough road, and there's not much time left. Then the other thing, the bill that Leigh mentioned was filed by Senator Ellis, and a similar bill filed by Senator Watson. Finally, it was a Republican bill to move forward to try to deal with some of the equal and uniform, the way they can appeal based on median value. And it's passed, and it doesn't hurt anything, which is a victory, because at one point in the process it would have hurt things. It makes a very small improvement that might help a tiny bit, but far, far short of what we needed. And there's another bill involving attorney's fees, as Leigh mentioned. One of the problems is when a large, say, office tower holder threatens to go to court, you usually have a settlement conference beforehand. And it's hard for the appraisal district to stand up and negotiate for a good value, because the problem is if we go to court and lose, the district, in other words, the taxpayers, will have to pick up the attorney's fees. And this is an adjustment that would reduce the amount of liability that the district might face. Therefore, it'll give the district a stronger negotiating position, so it'd be more equal when you go to the settlement conference. So some small progress being made. Watch for the local homestead exemption, and it will probably be reported every day in the Statesman, because it's a very important issue locally, and because things will be changing every single day.
I have a quick question for you, Dick. Is there anything that any citizens can do at this stage in the legislative session? Would it matter if people stood outside the entrance to the House and Senate chambers with signs that said, "We pay more because they pay less," or something?
Well, I mean, normally you would tell people to write your legislator, but our legislators are all support.
Are good on this.
I actually am not everyone's had to take a position, so there's nothing wrong with bolstering them, just to make sure they understand how important this is. I don't know about standing outside the chamber. I'm not sure that that's really the approach to take at this moment. But you can talk about it and have different decisions.
Well, thank you so much. We're fortunate tonight to have a number of representatives from the Austin City Council, and I want to specifically acknowledge Ann Kitchen, who's in the back, and Leslie Taylor, who's done some they've been working hard and are very supportive of whatever can be done to help address this issue. And the person who got the ball rolling last year when she was on the City Council is our current Mayor Pro Tem, Kathie Tovo. And she along with former council member Laura Morrison sponsored a resolution that did at least 4 really important things, one of which was presented publicly today, bore fruit today, and we'll be hearing more about that from Councilmember Tovo and Mayor Adler. But I've asked her to come and speak about the initiatives that she took and what's happening with them, because there's a lot of things happening right now that will be relevant to this.
Thank you very much, and I just want to express my gratitude really to Brigid Shea and the many others who organized this, because last year when I attended this discussion in this very same place, and it was all of the roads were full, just as they are tonight. It was really clear that we needed to, as a city, take every avenue we could to try to do something about the concerns that so many of you were raising in facing higher property taxes year after year. And so 4 things I would say have happened since then. And since Mayor Adler is here, I'll let him talk about some of the more recent ones as well, and hopefully between the 2 of us we'll cover what's relevant immediately. But 4 things came out of really the discussion that started here and continued through many other town halls throughout the spring and summer. The first was that we did pass a resolution at council to support changes at the legislature, more some of the reforms that you heard about earlier, and in addition to that, to support a flat exemption option, which I hope that we'll have success with. I hope our legislators will have success with, because I think it's a very important option to consider. We had a fair amount of discussion about it on the prior council, and it does offer us, it would be a tool in our toolbox that's very important. So that, and our staff, our city staff have been down at the Capitol offering support for the bills that are pushing toward reform and would offer us those options. The second is that we introduced a resolution very similar to the one that you heard described earlier in Waco that would ask companies who are interested in receiving entering into Chapter 380 agreements, receiving public incentives from the City of Austin, that they would commit to not protest their property tax valuations. And I will say that we had success in getting the initial resolution passed. When it came back for a final vote, a much weaker version was passed. So I hope with our new council that might be an issue we can take up again, because I think we ought to have a provision within the City of Austin that if you're a company seeking public incentives, you will commit not to protest your tax valuations. The third item that we took up was a homestead exemption. Last fall, we passed the first ever city homestead exemption. It is a very small exemption. For the reasons that Mr. Levine explained earlier, we do not have the ability to do anything. We do not have the ability to offer a flat exemption like the school district. We have only the ability to do a percentage base. So we crafted a percentage base that equates to the minimum allowed by state law, which is basically $5,000 per homestead. It doesn't amount to a huge amount on your tax bill, but it was a start. It will equate to $24 per year, $24 for the year per homestead. So it was a start in the direction of having a homestead exemption here in the City of Austin. And then the fourth is the one that Commissioner Shea referred to, the challenge petition, We considered, as some of you may remember, we considered the option of filing a challenge petition last spring and decided that we did not have the evidence we needed to mount a successful challenge in the time frame that we had left, which was about a week. So we instead passed a resolution that asked our staff to go forward to hire some experts and compile the data that we would need to file a successful challenge petition this taxing year. And so, as you heard, we did receive an analysis back. We received it and were presented with it last week. It became public information today. And I really encourage all of you to go to the City of Austin website. It is linked in a few different places. It's linked to Thursday's agenda. It's available on the council message board, and I have a couple copies with me here today. But it's a very important document for our community to look at and to discuss here in this next week. We've got to make a very quick decision. I have brought forward a resolution that we'll begin talking about at our council meeting on Thursday. I expect we'll vote on it next Thursday, and the resolution would direct our staff to go forward and file a challenge petition against the Travis Central Appraisal District for commercial property valuations, and that's based in part on, well, in large part, on the evaluation that we received, which does show that, as we suspected, commercial properties are undervalued. And I want to really commend TCAD, the Central Appraisal District. They did hire additional staff and do additional work to try to make sure that they have the very best information for valuations, for commercial valuations. I believe it has made some difference, and our analysis reflects that. However, our analysis also reflects that commercial properties are still undervalued compared to residential. And I'll just read you one of the key lines for me from the report that was released today. If the undervaluation was corrected through a challenge by the City of Austin, and I'm going to excerpt here, there would be potential savings for both Austin renters and homeowners through lower property taxes. And so again, I'm summarizing, but our report does show that there is a gap there. It is a matter of equity, and I believe our responsibility as City Council to move forward and address that through a challenge petition. I have copies of the resolution out there for anyone who's interested in reviewing it. And again, we really open up this conversation. There are various repercussions which we might talk about here or certainly in our public discussion. And so I welcome your involvement in that community conversation. And again, thank you so much of the work that's happened in this last year was really inspired by the comments and the concerns and the ideas that so many of you raised last year and throughout the last year as we work toward a more equitable property tax situation.
I really want to reinforce that. That's such an important thing. It does matter when we speak out, when we contact our elected officials, when we show up at meetings like this. It sends a powerful message. And I'm really delighted to introduce Mayor Adler, our next speaker, Mayor Steve Adler. The council took up the information today in their work session on this report, and I think it's very significant. So I'm really keen to hear what he has to say about it and hear thoughts about what the city is contemplating doing.
Well, good evening, everybody. It was basically a year ago, probably this week, that we all met in this room. I was sitting out in the pews with a lot of you when this issue was discussed. We have a home affordability crisis in this city, and we need to figure out all the available tools that we can bring into play and then start exercising in ways that can address this challenge that we have. I was real proud to see that the council last year initiated the action by ordering the study. I was proud to be with Brigid at numerous meetings over the course of last year. And I meant it when what I was saying during the months of the campaign last year, and I posted on my website that I was going to work with the local taxing authorities in order to ensure that property was assessed fairly and 100%, and that I stood prepared to initiate legal action if necessary in order to move that forward. And here we are. And the investigation as to whether or not that's something that the City Council should do on behalf of the city was introduced today at a work session is discussed. It's going to be discussed at the council meeting on Thursday, on the following Tuesday, and Thursday of next week, because that's the day by which we have to make an election. But let me put this in perspective in the way that I would really want the community to look at this. I'm not sure that if I was with the appraisal district and doing the work that Marya's been doing, that my conclusion would have been different from where the conclusion is that we have been presented by the Travis County Appraisal District. As I know she has said, because I've watched her several times over the course of the year, there is a limited amount of data that is available to make the Travis County Appraisal District determinations. There are a lot of logistical constraints that are built into the appraisal process, as Dick spoke about. And there have been attempts at the legislature to change those and improve those, and we haven't seen that relief come. The study that was done by the experts from the city is different, I believe, from the work that was done by the appraisal district because of the data that was employed. The study that was done by the city, and it's posted and available, and quite frankly, the moment that it became available, one of the first things I did was to make sure that a copy was sent to Dick and to Marya so that we could lay it out. This is a council that is looking at this as an opportunity for the community, for all of us to get together and figure out, is this a tool that will get us to a better place? The study that was done by the experts for the city used between 700 and 800 pieces of market data to compare what properties were selling for relative to what they were appraised. 90% of those pieces of data, it's my understanding from the report, that 90% of that data is not available to the Travis County Appraisal District. That doesn't mean it can't be used, because it can be used, because it's available now. And it's our intent to be able to make available to Travis County Appraisal District for her review, her staff's review, this data. We don't see this as an adversarial exercise, but rather, I believe that we are all on the same page in wanting to ensure that the property tax system in Travis County is implemented and executed fairly. And that's going to take all of us sharing all of the insight and all of the data and all of the expertise that together, cumulatively, we bring. And that's how I see this process going, because it's not just us. There are, I think, 113 taxing districts here in Travis County, each concerned with this, each with their taxpayers, each with their governmental obligations to set a budget and move through with that budget. So I am excited that we've been able to turn over what we have so far. We're still trying to gather additional pieces of data and information so that it can be shared. And my hope is that collectively we'll be able to sit down and figure out whether this is a tool that works, and if it can work, what's the best way for us to join hands to use and employ this tool. One of the things I would mention is that one of the reasons why appraisals are where they are has nothing to do with market value. Because the law is set up where someone can establish the value not just by market value, but it's also possible for someone to come in and say, I'm challenging my Adler appraised number, not because I think it's not market value, but because it is not equal and uniform to other similar properties. I don't have to say it's not market value. I just have to say somebody like me got a lower value, so I'm entitled to that lower value too. We all know the institutional problems that the district has in defending against those. But as soon as that starts to happen, you have a system that has the potential to spiral down. Because whenever somebody reduces their value based on that claim, now there's one more property for the next person to use to make the same kind of claim. It could be that this tool that we have might provide our community with our first and maybe our best opportunity to true everything back up to what it is that would represent 100% of market value. So my big takeaway could be one that I would like to convey is that the council last year implemented a study. We've now gotten that study back. It's posted, it's public, that would seem to indicate that if you could use data that was not available to the appraisal district, there might be different conclusions that would be reached that might get us to a fairer place. And we have a tool that could potentially be used maybe to true everything back up. But it does not come without risk, and it doesn't come without real serious logistical issues, which is why we're asking all other 113 taxing districts to weigh in right now, because it could result in a delay of tax bills being sent while we work this through. We'd like to hope that people who make their tax payments this year to get the tax deduction still have that opportunity, but it might be that you could make an estimated payment in the absence of getting your tax bill on the same time. It could be that you might have to wait until January of next year in order to make the payment, which is something to be considered. It could mean that taxing districts, governmental entities, school districts, municipal utility districts might not get their revenue in November, December the way that they had anticipated it would come, and it might come in January instead. So this is not something that is an action to be taken lightly or reflexively. This is something that as a group and as a community, we're going to need to sit down and collectively decide. But for what it's worth, a report was issued today. The city council of the city has sent it out and made it available to as wide a group as we can. And under the law, we have 10 days to decide this question. So we're all going to be working with each other and scurrying as fast as we can. I want to point out, too, that Councilmember Kitchen, as you mentioned, Councilmember Kitchen and Poole are here. I don't know if you each have, or did you have an additional update that you thought was worth mentioning?
No, I think you covered it very well.
So this is a conversation that we all have to engage in right away.
Thank you so much, Marya. I can tell you as one of those taxing entities, which is Travis County. We had a very lively conversation today. I can't go into any details, but we are certainly looking to see how we might work with the city to address this, because the big takeaway that I saw from the report was the first line in the executive summary bullet was Austin commercial properties have been substantially undervalued by TCAD for property tax purposes. For the period of 2012 through 2014, the average undervaluation was 47%. And it goes on from there. So I think that the community is really going to need to see us as the elected officials take whatever responsible steps we can take to begin to rectify the situation. So thank you so much, and I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker. I think she has to win awards for the number of times she's done this presentation. She's the chief appraiser of the Travis Central Appraisal District, and Marya Crigler has really made herself available to the community, and I appreciate her enormous amount of work in coming out to forums like this and answering questions and trying to explain the very complicated and difficult process that they go through at the appraisal district. So thank you, Marya.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank my staff. Not only thank them for being here, but thank them for all the hard work that they do. I've got a lot of staff members here that if you've got individual questions, they'll be available to answer questions. So please raise your hand and be proud that you work for the appraisal district, because I'm proud of you and I'm proud of the work that you do. And I really thank you for everything that you do for us. I have been vocal for the past year talking about what I think are some of the appraisal issues that confront appraisal districts that hinder and inhibit our ability to do our job the way that I think we should be able to do it. And we've talked about some of the things. Some of the things are things that were mentioned by Real Values for Texas, the lack of sales price disclosure. And I've talked about that. If you've been to any of my town hall meetings, I mention it at every town hall meeting. We do not have sales disclosure in the state of Texas. So we have very limited data with which to develop our models and develop our values. Now, we get our information from a variety of sources. We do not get access to MLS data. So we do not have MLS here in Travis County. I know there might be some other appraisal districts in other counties in Texas that might get access to that, but we don't. So we do a lot of mail-outs, we do a lot of surveys, we do a lot of phone calls, and that's just to get the information on residential properties. And we get probably about 45, maybe 50% of the residential information, and we develop our models on that. We get even less information on commercial properties. Last year, I estimated we got maybe between 10 and 12% of the commercial data when we developed our models. Now, we always get more information through the protest process. Once we send our models out, we get a lot of people that bring information into us, and we appreciate any information that we get. It helps us. We data mine it, we collect it, and we use it for our process next year. But what I really would love to be able to do would be able to have the information up front so that we can develop good models so that you don't have to come in and protest and bring you that information. We don't have to go through this process of the protest process is the easiest way or the most comprehensive way for me to get data to develop my next year's model. So we really would love to see some movement on sales price disclosure. Now I will say this, I have lobbied very hard and tried to get some movement on that issue, but I couldn't get anybody to carry the bill for us this year. So the bill wasn't even introduced to the legislature, let alone have a hearing or anything moving on it. And I really do think that we need to have some additional support from outside of the appraisal district to help us get this necessary tool. It's like asking the appraisal district to build a house and not giving us any lumber, no nails, no bricks, but expecting us to build a custom home. And I'm saying, I will do the job. We are willing to do the job. We want to do the job, but we need the tools in order to be able to do that. Some of the other things that were mentioned were some of the issues that we have related to equal and uniform appraisal. And I will say this, the Legislative Budget Board did a pretty comprehensive study in the interim session, and they came out with a report on equal and uniform. And they made four very specific recommendations to address the problems and issues with the appraisal system. And let me just tell you what those recommendations they were. The first recommendation was to amend the statute to use deviation from median appraisal ratio instead of median appraised value as the basis to determine equal and uniform. The second recommendation was to establish the standards for what defines a comparable property, limit comparable properties to those within the same appraisal district, require adjustments to be based on general appraisal standards, and establish which appraised value to use at each stage of the protest and appeal. The third recommendation was to amend the statute to require the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts to establish standards for the development and calibration of adjustments for industrial, petrochemical refining and processing, utility properties, and other unique properties by rule. And the fourth recommendation was to amend the statute to require a property owner who loses an equity lawsuit to pay the appraisal district's attorney's fees to make this requirement consistent for both parties, the property owner and the appraisal district. Of those four recommendations, what we have is in terms of bills that have moved through the legislature and have passed both the houses is one portion of the second recommendation.
Marya, do you want us to roll the PowerPoint? Should we start rolling the PowerPoint? You want us to start?
Yeah, I'm just going off topic now, just so I can be more topical on some of the other comments that have been made. So the recommendation that the bill that we got right now, based on all four of those recommendations, the only bill that we got right now in the legislature that has a chance of moving forward is the one that would require that the adjustments be based on general appraisal standards. Everything else has gone to the wayside. We're not going to get any movement on any of those other things. And just let me give you some perspective on why some of those are really important to us. You know, we talked about attorney's fees. And I know you guys have been very concerned about what's going on, and I know that you went out and and took a really close look at our lawsuit that we had going on with the Renaissance Hotel, because that's one of the properties that we had appraised at something less than market value, and we wound up in litigation to get the value lowered even more under equal and uniform. We fought very hard on that lawsuit, and we won. So yay team, thank you guys very much. We won that litigation. But here's why it's important that we talk about attorney's fees, because my attorney's fees and expert fees for this case was $62,000. So we won, but it cost us a lot to win. And when we lose, we are on the hook not only for our attorney's fees, but we're also liable for the attorney's fees on the other side. So one of the cases that we had most recently where we lost was the AMD case. And we lost for tax years 2013 and 2014. And we had to pay attorney's fees to the other side of $151,000. That doesn't include my attorney's fees and expert fees. That's just what we pay to the other side. So, you know, that's really important because we have to, as we go through and think about litigation and what cases we're going to bring forward, I have to keep in mind that these dollars that I'm spending are really your dollars. And I want to make sure that when I take a case forward, that it's a case that I've got a good opportunity to win. It's going to cost us something to win, but I've got a good opportunity to win. But that's why it's so important to us to see some change in legislation in terms of who gets awarded attorney's fees and how much the attorney's fees get awarded. Because even when we are successful, it's kind of like we win but we lose. And so we'd like to see some changes. The appraisal district, we are required to appraise all properties at market value, and you know, based on the data that we have, we do a good job. But let me say that again, based on the data that we have and that we're able to get, we do a really good job. Now we went back to the to our tax units last year and asked for some additional funds so that we could hire more staff, purchase some more data to try to get better information so that we could develop better models. And we were focusing specifically on our commercial models to see if we could get more information to do a better job on that. And we did. We were successful. We were able to get more information. We increased our commercial values 35% across the board. So we had a pretty substantial increase in our commercial values based on the data that we were able to get. But you know, when I develop my appraisals and develop my values, I have to think about not only can I get the appraised value right, but can I defend it? Can I defend it before the ARB? And can I defend it in court? And do I have enough data to defend those values? And so the more data that we have, the better job we can do. But it really goes down to what data is available to us. We appreciate that there was the study done by the city. We haven't been able to see or read the entire report yet. We're still trying to digest that. And there's some underlying data that we would like to see, because that might be information that we could incorporate in our appraisal models. But I will say this, the data that they have that we might incorporate will only do us any good for this year. It doesn't help us for next year, or the year after that, or the year after that. We really need some substantive changes to the law to really help us moving forward. We do, again, we're going to try to appraise properties at 100% market value. We do get tested. The comptroller will come through and they test us every other year. They're going to do a property value study, and then they'll do a study to make sure that we're using generally accepted appraisal methods and standards. So we get tested to make sure that we're adhering to all the practices that we should be adhering to, and that our level of appraisal is accurate. But again, you know, the level of the test and how good we do is really dependent on the data that we have. I keep coming back to that. I keep coming back to that sales data because it is really key. It is very critical. And I've heard some people say, well, appraisal district, you really don't need sales data to do your appraisals because there's other approaches that you can use. It's not all about sales data. There are two other approaches. You can use an income approach or you can use a cost approach, and that should be able to get you to market value. But I will say that there is no approach to appraisal that doesn't include sales data. If you look at an income approach, there is a capitalization rate that you use against the net operating income to determine what that value would be that an investor would pay for that future income. But that capitalization rate is derived based on sales. If you look at a cost approach, yes, there are national standards, national guidelines, books that we can look at, like Marshall and Swift or Ream appraisal books, that will give us what it would cost to construct a house. But there is no guide that's going to tell me how much an acre of land in downtown Austin is worth. We only get that information from sales data. And then, of course, the sales approach is self-explanatory. You're going to look at sales data. So it really all comes back to the data that we have and how much data we can get in order to be able to do our job. Now, for property owners, because you're saying, okay, well, that's great, but how does that help me now? How does that help me this year with my property values? We are trying to just be as reflective of the market as we can be, particularly for residential property, because I know a lot of you are concerned, you're residential homeowners, and you're concerned about your personal property values. If you look at your market value that we've put on your appraisal notice, and you think that the property wouldn't be able to sell for that much, you can come into our office and bring information. And again, I tell every taxpayer, bring information into our office, because you may be able to get sales information from your broker that we don't have. And we certainly would appreciate getting that information from you, because not only will we use it to help you, but we're going to use it and incorporate it in our models that we develop next year. But there might also be condition issues with your property that we're not aware of. If you've got interior water damage, if you've got mold, if you've got a foundation issue, those are things that are not visible from the exterior of the property, because we only do exterior inspections. We're not going inside everybody's home to see what your condition is on the interior. You know what's on the interior of your home. So bring us photographs. If you've had somebody come out and give you some cost estimates on what it would cost to do your repairs, bring that information into our office, and our appraisals will listen to you intently, and we will weigh the evidence that you're giving you. I'm not promising anybody that you're going to get any discount or any amount of discount, but we will listen to you. And most property owners will see that we do listen to you, and if there's a possibility for an adjustment, we will make that adjustment as we go through the informal process. Some of the benefits that you have that will assist you are exemptions. So if you've got a resident homestead, it's your principal place of residence, you own it and you occupy it, you're entitled to a general homestead exemption. And for the school districts, it's state mandated. It must be $15,000 for the school district. For the other taxing entities, it's a local option. They get to choose what that exemption amount is. Now, by law, they are limited. They can only select a percentage on a homestead exemption, so they can't select a flat amount, which is some of the legislation that we're hoping to get. But they can do a percentage anywhere up to 20%. The maximum they can give is 20%. So Travis County does a 20% exemption. City of Austin just introduced an exemption this year. So those are some local option exemptions for just a general homestead property owner. One of the other benefits of having a homestead exemption is it invokes the appraisal limitation. So right now, it's a 10% limitation on appraisal increases. Now your market value is going to go up just whatever might be reflective of the market. It could go up 2%, it could go up 20%, it could go up 50%. It's just whatever is reflective of the market, but your appraised value with your homestead limitation and the protection that you get from the legislature, your appraised value will only go up 10%. And we try to highlight that a little bit more on the notice this year because we've shaded it and made it bold, just to draw your eye to that so that you will know the protection is there for you. It looks at last year's value plus 10%, and it compares it to this year's value, this year's market value. And you're going to get the lesser of whatever those two numbers are. So if your last year's appraised value plus 10% is $200,000, and this year's market value is $250,000, then your appraised value is going to be set at $200,000. If your last year's value plus 10% is $200,000, and this year the market value is $175,000, then what you'll get is you'll get the $175,000. So you're going to get the lesser of the two. I will say this, it can be both a blessing and a curse. When we've got markets that are rapidly escalating, and we've had an incredible market in Travis County for the last 2 years, but when we've got markets that are rapidly escalating, you're going to get a great protection. And this year, about 80% of property owners have the benefit of that limitation invoked this year because most people's appraised value is significantly lower than their market values. So it is a blessing in the years when the market is rapidly appreciating. It can be a curse in the years when the market goes flat or the market starts depreciating or going down slightly because that 10% keeps going up until that test equalizes and your market value goes down. So even though market values may be going down, they may not be going down at the same rate that you're trying to catch up to your cap value. So, you know, we did have a downturn in 2009 and 2010, and values did go down, but a lot of property owners didn't realize that because they were still catching up to that cap protection that accrued over time. So I just give you just a heads up. It can be a blessing in these times, but it can also continue to escalate your appraised values in markets when they're flat and going down, just because you've got to catch up to that protection that you've had over years that has accumulated. The other benefit for property owners in terms of exemptions is your over 65 exemption. And if anybody here does not yet have their over 65 exemption, come see me in the corner. I've got applications. I want to make sure that you get this benefit because it's a significant benefit for you, particularly for your school district taxes. The over 65 exemption gives you an additional exemption amount, and it's $10,000 for schools, and it's state mandated. But the big benefit is that it sets a ceiling on your school district taxes. So your school district taxes may go up or may go down below that amount, but they will never go above that ceiling amount that is established the first year that you qualify for your over 65 exemption. And since the school tax represents 54% of your tax bill, that's huge. It can be a really significant benefit for you. So if you don't have an over 65 exemption, come see me. I want to make sure that everybody that's entitled to it has it. It's a huge benefit for property owners. If you are a disabled veteran with a service-connected disability, then you're entitled to a 100% exemption from all property taxes from all taxing units. So that's another huge benefit if you're a disabled veteran with a service-connected disability. And I've got the applications for that as well. Now the ceiling for over 65 only applies to school districts. There is no ceiling on the other taxing units. But the other taxing units do offer a pretty significant additional exemption amount. So both Travis County and the City of Austin give you an additional $70,000 off of your appraised value as an exemption for being over 65 or disabled. So there are pretty significant benefits for making sure that you've got your exemption in place. The other protection that are, do you mind if I steal your thunder on deferrals? The other benefit that you can take advantage of is there is a deferral. If you're over age 65, you can defer your taxes and defer your paying your taxes. Those taxes don't go away. They're not forgiven. They continue to accrue. They accrue at 8% interest. And if at some point in time you're no longer eligible for that exemption, or you pass away and your heirs inherit the property, then those taxes become due within 180 days of that change in status. I will caution anybody that wants to do the deferral for over 65, if you've got a mortgage, make sure that you check with your mortgage company before you do a deferral, because we don't want anybody to be in violation of your agreement with your mortgage company for not paying your taxes by doing a deferral. So please check with your mortgage company before you do a deferral. And with that, I will turn it over to Bruce.
Great, and we will be taking questions as soon as Bruce wraps up. And can people also fill out those exemption forms with your staff? If you're overwhelmed with people wanting to do that, so you can find her staff again. If they wave their hands, there's a big group of them over here who can help answer your questions and fill out the forms. And I just want to say, Bruce Elfant is the hardest working tax collector assessor, at least in the southwestern United States, and he's probably farther than that. But he'll wrap us up, and then we'll go to your questions.
Right. And I'll have the briefest comments. My job's the easiest here tonight. I do serve as a member of the Travis County Appraisal Board as a non-voting member by statute, and I've worked hard to help add more resources, both on the staff side and on the litigation side, to help the appraisal district do a more effective job. It's too bad that we have to do this, but it's because we don't have sales price disclosure that it's going to be more expensive to get the information that we should have readily available. And did we mention that we don't have sales price disclosure? It's really a takeaway. I was on the board for the Texas Association of Counties, and for a decade I've worked at the legislature to try to get sales price disclosure, and we came up against a brick wall. The state real estate interests just don't want it, and up to this point haven't let it happen. But her job, Marya's job, is to figure out fair market value, right? The best place for that information is the MLS listings, but she's not allowed to look at it. That is crazy, and it's bad public policy, and we need to go back to the legislature next year. We need to have a bill, and we need to be supporting it strongly. So I've worked in the appraisal board to try to get more resources so we can do a better job. I've worked at the Capitol to try to deal with the sales price disclosure and the equal and uniform, which you've heard about. The equal and uniform is such a broad statute that you could take an apartment complex in East Austin and compare it to an apartment complex in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Is that equal and uniform? No. You can take an HEB and compare it to a grocery store whose name you've never heard of. Is that equal and uniform? So that what Marya and Dick and others have been trying to do is tighten that statute so equal and uniform really has some meaning. And it really is equal and uniform. And until we get that, it's going to be that much harder for the appraisal district to win some of these lawsuits. Because, you know, the other side has a lot of running room with the statute that's currently in place. My day job is to collect taxes and distribute it to 117 taxing entities throughout Travis County. And so that's what I'm tasked with doing. And what I'd like to talk about briefly is the tax calendar, assuming it stays the same, but it sounds like it might not. And we can deal with those questions too later. But as you all know, we send out tax bills in early October. And the first deadline that a lot of us care about is December 31st, because we want to get the tax deduction for our property taxes, right? So if you want to get that tax deduction, you've got to pay your taxes by December 31st. The second deadline that we care about is the delinquent date. And you have to pay your taxes in full by January 31st because February 1st taxes become delinquent. And the interest, the penalty and interest on February 1st at 12:01 a.m. is 7%. And it goes up 2% a month. It goes up 2% a month for the rest of the year. So it can get expensive. And so we encourage people, obviously, you can pay all your taxes by the deadline to do so. If you can't pay all your taxes by the deadline, you want to pay as much as possible so you can protect as much of your money from penalty and interest as possible, and then you want to get with the tax office and work out a payment plan. And we're going to encourage you to pay it as fast as you can, so you're not going to incur any more penalty and interest than you absolutely have to. So February 1st is an important date, so you avoid penalty and interest. People who are over 65 can pay in 4 equal installments throughout the year, and they don't have to worry about penalty and interest. So if you want to pay it over 4 installments rather than at one time by January 31st, you can do that. As Marya said, you can defer your payments, and that could be a great thing or it could be a bad thing. If you have kids and want your kids to have your house, but you live 30 years after 65 and there's a $200,000 tax bill, your kids might not appreciate that. I don't know. So you want to think that through, and obviously check with your mortgage company and see if they're going to have any provisions against that. Payments. This is something that is a top priority in my office, and the analogy I use is the airline industry. Most of the people in this room are old enough to remember that if you wanted to fly somewhere, you had to go to the airport or a travel agent, right? And you wrote a paper check, and a real person issued you a paper ticket, right? When's the last time you did that? Yeah, haven't done that in a while. Well, that was the airline's business model back then, and they couldn't sustain it. Can you imagine how much it costs to fly today if that was still their business model? Well, unfortunately, that's still the tax office's business model to a great extent. Most of y'all write paper checks. Some of y'all do worse things than that. Some of y'all do a lot worse things than that. No, I was mentioning at lunch today, we had a forum, and we had a woman come in and pay her property tax bill in $2 bills. And the stack was like 3 feet high. And you know, it was a good photo op, and it went on Facebook and all. It's pretty cool. But it took us 2 days to process that payment. So we're processing, you know, we can have a day towards a deadline where we have $50 million in cash coming in on a single day. I mean, my office collects $3.7 billion in taxes for the 117 entities. So what we're trying to do is encourage people to pay electronically. Like we pay for airline tickets and almost anything else now. To the mayor's credit, the mayor paid his taxes by e-check, and we really appreciate that, Mayor. And in the last couple of years, we've quadrupled our online payments from about $50 million to $200 million. But you can pay online by e-check for just $1 fee, so you don't have to sit in line, you can pay online. And we want to encourage you to sign up for eBill. You can go to traviscountytax.org and sign up to get your tax bill by email. We spend $100,000 sending out tax bills. That's money that we can save for the taxpayers. And finally, you can get your tax receipt online 24/7. When you're working on your taxes at the last minute, you get the receipt and it's 10 o'clock at night, we're not open. We are open because you can get your receipt online. So I'm really encouraging our citizenry to help us change our business model like the airline industry, so many other industries have. Pay us online by e-check. Get your bills online by email, and get your receipts online at our website. And we can save the county maybe $500,000 and continue having good customer service. at the Travis County Tax Office. I appreciate being part of this. I feel as strongly as the rest of the panelists that our tax system is deeply flawed in a lot of places. We do the best we can at the local levels under the statutes that we have to work with, but it's going to take all of us to be involved. Y'all are here, you care. I'm assuming most of you are voters, but most citizens aren't voters. And we had a runoff election for mayor and city council. And I'm proud of the new single-member districts that we have. But the fact was that 7 or 8 of the seats that were outstanding in the runoff, a majority of 15% of the voters determined the outcome of those elections. So 85% of registered voters sat on the sidelines and allowed a majority of 15% to determine the outcome of the elections. And I think hopefully they did a good job, but if they didn't, it's going to take a generation to fix. And it's all our responsibility to be engaged, to come to these meetings, to register, and to vote. And 15% can't change the world, but 50% might be able to change the world. So you got to help us get people more engaged in their democracy. And with that, I'll turn it back to our commissioner, and look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you. Bruce has, if anybody who's not registered, Bruce always carries voter registration cards with him. So if anybody needs one of those, he has one handy with him. I have a really quick question, and then we're going to invite people to come and gather in the center aisle if you have questions, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. But one of my questions has to do with how we can potentially be successful in getting sales price disclosure. I've heard over and over again that the real estate industry is opposed to it, and yet realtors are very much consumer driven. So I'm wondering if maybe there's a way to organize consumer power to say to real estate associations around the state, maybe a pledge that I won't do business with a realtor unless they're publicly in favor of sales price disclosure, and make it clear homeowners are being hurt by the lack of this information. It allows commercial properties to hide the true value and shift the burden to homeowners. So maybe something like that. I'd love any thoughts about that, but a way to marshal consumer pressure to begin to change this.
Let me suggest the possibility for an alternate scenario, which is not to say that's not a good idea. If we were to proceed with this challenge, it would reverberate around the state, because there are a lot of cities that have looked at this, and because of logistical issues, perhaps because they don't have as good a relationship with their appraisal district as I think that we have in this city. I think if we were to take this challenge to that next step, and if it was determined based on the evidence and data that it was a valid challenge, I think that that would fundamentally change the conversation, because the reason that we would be successful in that challenge would point directly to the data that was not available. And I think that this possibility holds the potential to change the historic conversation.
So it really is an important action. And are you going to take it up this Thursday? Will you be voting on it this Thursday?
The Mayor Pro Tem's resolution is set for this Thursday, next Tuesday, and the following Thursday, when we ultimately have to make it.
So if people think that the City of Austin should challenge the appraisals and really try and get the ball rolling to try and bring equity to this, they should contact the City Council and the Mayor's office?
I think, as I mentioned before, we sure want to hear from you. So if you're able to come down and talk about it, I think that would be great. Contacting your council members and letting them know your opinion would also be a good idea. And I want to acknowledge Councilmember Kitchen is also one of the co-sponsors on this resolution, as are Councilmember Troxclair and Councilmember Zimmerman.
Excellent. Great. Weigh in, and then if anybody has questions, let's start lining up in the center aisle, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Go ahead, Leigh.
I just want to highlight the fact of what Commissioner Shea said, and the fact that the realtors are actually one of the groups that is behind the push against real values for Texas and what we're doing as well. So I think it's a great idea. I think that there are several different groups that tax consultants make a lot of money off of this, realtors make a lot of money off of the people in uniform law, and so do home builders. So I think it's important to know who's behind all of the doors and who's in favor of what. And putting that pressure on, using your dollar to make an impact is just as important as talking to your legislators and your other elected officials. So just want to...
Sometimes it's more effective because it's a direct consumer pressure. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and go to the first question. We're going to try and keep them brief so we can get through as many as we can. Thank you so much.
Hi, I was just wondering how, during the appraisal process, comparable properties are identified. We have a 1947 house under 800 square feet, and one of the comparable properties was like a 2012 house that was over 2,000 square feet that was 2.5 times the value. So it was way outside the median, so it totally skewed our appraisal value.
This was on the informal process that you just did, or?
No, sorry, this was previous, like I guess the 2013.
You know, and this is something that's going to come up a lot more as we start having gentrification and revitalization and mixed neighborhoods where you've got a combination of properties within a single individual neighborhood. We try to, particularly when we're looking at sales data, we've got to use what sales data is available. And if there's not a sale of a property that is the same age as your property, we're going to have to try to use whatever sales information we have and try to adjust it based on the differences between the two properties. It's really all about available data. If we have more data, good chance that we might have more properties that might be more comparable in terms of size and age to your property, but we just have to do the best we can with the data that we have.
Thank you for your question. And if folks have individual questions that they want to talk with the appraisal district staff about, again, a group of them are here. Raise your hands. They're happy to step out in the hallway with you and take up your individual questions.
If my appraisers can go out in the hallway, that way they're available to you if you've got any questions.
Sure,
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Let's go to the next question.
This is for Dick.
And speak up, Fred, and take questions.
I will. Can you hear me?
Now it's better.
Okay. You made a very good case for how the property tax is unfair to middle class and lower income people, residential homes. But I'd like you, Dick, to talk about overall whether the state and local taxes in Texas are fair to middle class and less affluent people. So we put the property taxes unfairness in the context of the entire state and local taxes.
Well, in fact, there is a study done every 2 years by the controller. It's called Tax Exemptions and Tax Incidents. Lists the cost of the state of all the various exemptions to taxes. And then the incidence is who benefits or who loses by family income level or by type of business. And it is very clear that Texas has, by national standards, the 5th most regressive tax system, meaning the proportion of taxes paid by lower income families compared to higher income families is the 5th worst of any state. And everybody knows that Texas is a low tax state, but our system is so unfair that the people at the bottom in Texas still pay more than the people at the bottom of all but 47 other states.
Wow.
So in other words, you're getting hurt doubly in the system. Believe it or not, even though I know the property tax is the reason you're all here tonight, and property tax is the most unpopular of the major state taxes, it's actually one of the least unfair of the taxes that we collect in Texas. It's really the sales tax, which is more than half of state tax revenue, also an important source of revenue for the city and the county, that is extremely unfair because it's directly linked to income. Is, you know, people with more money have more to spend, but they can spend it on things that are not taxed, like lawyers and accountants are not taxed in Texas, or they have money left over to save, which is not taxed in Texas. So the bottom line is that we really need to get outside the box of our current tax system, take a look at what most other states do, and you know what's coming. They have state personal income taxes. When people who can afford to pay more, do pay more. Contrary to what you hear, that is not prohibited by the state constitution. It just says that if the legislature wanted to have an income tax, it would have to be subject to a vote of the people first. And according to the current constitution, if we had an income tax, 2/3 of it would go to cut your school property taxes, and the other third would go to education. So it seems to me like a good deal. We're just waiting for somebody to step up and give us the opportunity.
Christian, before we go to the next question, is the live streaming still underway? Okay, good.
Hi, my name is Ross Smith. In 17 years of challenging my property tax appraisal, the things that I've learned are that the main price drivers, appraisal drivers, are size, location, and condition rating. Condition rating runs from 5, which is brand new, down to 1, which is a tumble-down shack with a busted slab. My condition rating for a 60-year-old house in original condition is a 4. And I'm sure that most of the people in this room who have older houses find themselves in the same position. There's nothing actually wrong with the house. It's simply well lived in. It has 60-year-old windows that leak a little bit. It has a 60-year-old sink. It has a 60-year-old tub. And in all of my years of trying to challenge it, I have yet to find a combination of information to give to your people that would justify getting my condition rating dropped from a 4 to a 3. And that's the truth. And so I suggest, my question is, what can I show to you to justify that my house is not in comparable condition, even though there's nothing seriously wrong with it, that it's not in comparable condition to a house that's 5 years old? And the second thing is, have you ever considered factoring age into the condition rating?
Yeah.
So the rating system that we have that goes from 1, it actually goes from 1 all the way up to 8. And so an 8 would be one of your high-end mansion homes. 5s are going to be pretty much a regular home. And 4s are also typical regular homes. So we do that, and it's based on what the appraisers see in terms of the type and quality of construction. We do track the age of the properties, and we do track age as a separate variable in our models. And we do depreciate the properties based on their age, and then we also have a separate condition factor that we use. So your property could be in superior, it could be in excellent, average, fair, poor, or just salvageable condition. So those are some other factors that we have. I would say if that gentleman can get with one of my appraisers, and we I think we probably need to talk a little bit more about what we do and what our model is based on, so that we can educate him a little bit more about what the factors we're using are.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you and thank you for the progress that you're making dealing with the disparity with undervaluation of commercial property. I think that's really important. I don't have any commercial property. I would like to talk about something really specific that has to do with this issue of fairness and the way that the Travis County Appraisal District values the lots, just the land value. Now, I know that, okay, I'm in Allendale, that's the Y4000 district, and the, according to their readjustment report from last year, over half of the properties in that particular area, it's about 3,000 properties. Over half of those 1,500 properties were of all different sizes, between 10,000 square feet and 22,000 square feet, over twice as much, were all valued at exactly $250,000. $253,000, I'm sorry. $253,000. Now, it's obviously completely illogical and very unfair to value a property that's 10,000 square feet. I mean, not a property, we're just talking about the dirt, land value, at the exact same amount as a 22,000 square foot property, more than twice the size. Obviously, if those two lots were both vacant and they both sold, the one that's over twice as big is going to sell for a lot more money. Now, I know that in this reevaluation report that you have a couple of years, that you look at the vacant lot sales in the area. Okay. and say in 2014 you looked at like 5 properties, and then you just took the average of those and called that the base value, said, okay, we're going to go for 253,000, we're going to call these 1,500 properties that. I would like to know how we as residential property owners get the appraisal district to use those example properties, say take those 5 properties, vacant lots, and figure out a square footage value, an average square footage value, and apply the square footage value to the exact size of each lot. How do we get that to happen? Do we have to get a legislature involved?
Yeah, we are looking at our land values and reevaluating.
Looking at it, it's time to pay taxes.
Wait, let her answer.
So we are continuing to study that, get available data. If you feel that we've done it inappropriately on your property, if you feel that we've undervalued or overvalued you, please bring in your examples.
I did it last year. They said, nothing, they're not going to touch it. They're not going to touch it. They don't even get they said, we're done. You're out of here. Because we looked at another part of my property. But the thing is that I want to know, what do we do to get, I mean, does the city council have to, do we have to get the legislature? How do we do this so that you have to change from valuing all of them within a huge range, over twice the size, and not do it by square footage of the individual lots? It makes perfect sense. All you do is you figure out a square footage, and the computer, your system, just multiplies it by the size of the individual lot, and then you have a value. Everybody's value is different. It's based on their actual property. It has to do. It's sort of a reverse way of you making it easier on yourself and unfair to us.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So I don't know. How do we do it? Does the city council have to pass a resolution? What do we do?
No, we are identifying that as an issue that we're working on, and we will continue to try to make progress on that. And I will get with my staff to see if we can make further progress and more quicker results for you.
More quicker by, like, can you say a date?
I'm hoping that we can make some changes hopefully next year.
Next year?
Yeah.
Before the appraisals come out next year?
Before the appraisals come out next
year. Okay, so we got about,
what? Absolutely.
11 months.
Yes.
We'll hold you to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, remember this. Thank you so much. Try and keep your questions brief. We want to get through a lot of questions, and we need to try and wrap up by 8.
Thank you. John Hart, Crestview on Boonville Road. I hear just about enough to give me an impression that all of you here care about the issues of people being able to afford to live in the homes as my wife has done for nearly 30 years.
That's right.
When I met my wife in 2007, it took her 2 or 3 years to tell me that working at the University of Texas in catering, she was unable to pay her bills for 10 months. And that was with me paying half the mortgage, all the food and fuel. So living in Austin is not sustainable for people who have lived here for decades. You all know that. So I'm addressing, I think, solutions. First, when you have a market value determining taxes, it does not include the right to live as a validated citizen of a community. And I appreciate this church, not a church, but community. It's different than a church or religion. To gather in community, to not just nurture souls, lives, but to do justice. So we need to change the basic concept of a market value taxation. I'm a veteran, a disabled 100% veteran. I'm also a veteran of seeing these issues all over America. And they're all over the world. In the 1970s, the tax assessor for San Francisco City and County went for about 6 hours telling people, we're giving you a great deal of the market value of your homes. It's fair, and you can have a paper trail for all the market transactions. But most of these people live in 400 to 800 square foot houses for at least 3 generations, and some had it passed on from the immigrants who built them after the gold rush. And so there was no rebuttal for taxing people out of their homes beyond their incomes of Social Security retirement benefits. So the taxes were higher than the income of the people living in them. They had to move, so our police, our teachers, our firemen, city employees are now having to find options to live in Austin. They can't have that requirement. They have to be a resident of Austin to be a police officer anymore. So I'm addressing the basic dynamics. I'm glad we have some Republican women, because most of the laws that determine market value and other things have existed from colonial days prior to the Republic and afterwards. And they're legislated by men. And most of the Republican women are in the lens of the conservative wing of their party. So I want to encourage them to work with all of the council to examine the basis. There are solutions, like Mr. Adler and Mr. Levine. Get college students in economics to show the inputs and the outputs of the board. What?
You're supposed to keep it under a minute.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay. But, you know, recruit them, get grants, and address this with the state legislature. We need to provide equity other than a marketplace determined by a bunch of rich old white men, and because that goes all the way back to the arguments for the adoption of the Constitution.
Thank you so much.
Economic discrimination of Austin.
Thanks so much, John. Appreciate your comments.
The job is needed to be done and see it go through.
Thank you so much. Out of consideration for everyone else that wants to speak, please keep us under a minute. Thank you.
And this is former City Council Member Willie Lewis here with us tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Willie Lewis. I'm sorry the mayor had to leave, but to the tax assessor, why the high interest rate as far as the delinquent taxes? You know, you start off at what, 7, and then you wind up at 27 at the end of the year. And what the other question is, who sets it? And if you're going to pay electronically, why is the charge? Why is the charge added to it? You know, my question, one of the things that I think that everybody talks about Austin is affordability. If you look at the non-taxable property in the city of Austin proper, it's probably about 50% of the property that's in Austin that we have to serve. That, you know, from federal all the way down to nonprofits. So that's my question is to, and talking about your evaluation. I had property that went up 300+%, so I know somebody's not doing what they should do. Thank you.
That's exactly right.
Y'all want to take a private taxes in a couple of
Councilmember, the penalty and interest is set by the state legislature.
Oh, okay.
It was set in a time when interest rates were higher, and it hadn't been reset. It was intended to be a hammer to try to encourage people to pay on time. It may be out of whack for the times, but it's set by the legislature. And the charge for paying by e-check, when I came into office, that charge was as high as $40, and I was able to negotiate it down to $1. Unlike the merchants who benefit from credit cards, we can't by law absorb the costs of handling electronic payments, and so the $1 goes to our outside vendor to do it. But hopefully $1 is reasonable enough to encourage people to pay.
All right, well, thank you.
And Dick Levine lobbied, along with others, to try and get the legislature to lower that interest rate on delinquent taxes.
We don't have the opportunity to, if the bank charges a high interest rate, we just go to another bank. Since you're the only one in town, we can't do that.
And it's the legislature that sets that, unfortunately.
Sure. I know most of y'all through some other political organizations and entities in which you guys have served. My purpose here is to complain. I'm not here to praise. I'm not here to clap for you or any of that stuff. I'm mad because my property values have completely risen outside of any scope of reality except for rich people who come from out of state and plop down a big pile of money. And you're basing your values of my home on these outsiders who come in the state and plop down unreasonable amounts of money for these houses we've been living in for 30 years, and then you say, well, Skip, you can sell that for that much. Well, I'll tell you what, anybody got that kind of money, come to my house, I'm selling. We're not seeing it. It's not fair. With that gentleman that you guys quieted and complained about talking too loud or too long, what he had to say was for real. Not every house is going to get $400,000. It's just 8. You ran on the platform, ma'am, that you were going to fix this and the secret codes that they employ to keep our taxes high. You and I had a conversation. You should remember that conversation we had. And it was about the codes. Now, that other gentleman came up here and complained to you about the different codes and the way that you secretly code stuff. And when we come to complain about it, we have to give you proof that your assessment is wrong, and then you decline us. So why are we bringing you information other than to give you some database on which you can confirm? But it ain't helping us when we bring it, because they keep the same codes in place. My property does not have a cracked slab, but it's a worn out house. When they buy it, they're going to knock it down. And guess what? I want you to fix those codes that she can't seem to manipulate downward to reflect the true value of the house. And recognize this, we are not in the same boat. You're trying to raise my taxes, I'm trying to keep them down. The last thing I want to remind you guys is this, and this is what it gets right back down to. You get anybody to come to my house and plop down the money that somebody else with a rebuilt kitchen, a rebuilt backyard, landscaped, you get them to come put that money down on my house, I'll be glad to pay you those taxes. In the meantime, please, madam, when we bring you information and complaints that the property is overvalued, pay particular attention, because we will sue, and then you're going to have real costs, and you get 150, 200, 300 district court lawsuits over these values. So quit playing these games, please. Pay attention. We do vote.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Hello, my name is Margot Clark. I have one really quick question for Marya about, you said legal fees, when you lose, you have to pay for the other party, but you didn't say that they had to pay your legal fees when you won. And I wondered why that was so one-sided.
Legally, they do not have to pay our legal fees. There's no provision in the law for us to recoup legal fees if we win.
And they tried to, that was a recommendation from the, what was it?
Legislative Budget Board.
Legislative Budget Board, and the legislature took no action on that this session.
I want to talk about the land values again, because I believe that the fact that the land values are exploding in this city is leading directly to the destruction of Austin's neighborhoods.
Yes.
Because when my house is valued way low, my lot went up 110% in 2 years, and that's after it went up 150% in 2000. So now, any real estate speculator, these are people who are using real estate as a profit-making enterprise. They buy a piece of property, the first thing they're going to do is scrape off the house. And then they're going to build something much bigger with square foot value that they can add on and profit from. It doesn't even matter what the quality of the construction is, because they're not going to be there in 5 years when my clay soil will make the doors not work and the walls crack. They're going to make a profit off of building a bigger house on a place where someone actually was supposed to live. You know, market value only is valuable for someone who is selling a house. It is not at all geared to people who are living in their homes, working, raising families, etc. And paying taxes.
And the market value of my lot, that I've protested over and over again. Nowhere. I've gotten nowhere, not 1 inch, even when I showed evidence that it costs more to build on the lot that I have because of the soil.
Have you had any engineering reports or anything done based on your soil that you brought in?
I had to build a new house on that lot. Had to rip my old house down because it was literally coming apart, wall from ceiling. I had sunlight coming in between a masonry wall and a ceiling because I could see the green of my lawn underneath the walls of my house. And yes, so I had lots of engineering reports. I had soil testing done. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter. I got nowhere. Nowhere.
Paul Snyder's my deputy chief appraiser. Paul, can you raise your hand? Could you go back and talk to Paul and give him some information on your property?
A lot of good.
I want to thank you, Brigid, for organizing this vital forum, and I want to thank each of you for your leadership on this. And I want to second the sentiments that have just been expressed, and I completely agree that the concept of market value isn't going to work for us in Austin. And I think that the commitment of passion and righteous anger that you're hearing is important to be voiced. And what I hope that it does is for you to, just continue your commitment and leadership on this limited forum that we have here in Travis County, City of Austin, and that the people in the room will take very seriously the need to communicate to the legislature isn't going to work for folks in Austin. And that what we've got to do instead is to communicate. Does anyone here have family around the state in other cities or towns? I see some hands and some heads nodding, and it's really vital that we communicate with the people in our families that live in other cities and especially rural areas as well, and get them knowledgeable on what we've just been educated about, what some of the options are, so that our family members can begin to talk about those things to the legislators too. So that's my comment, and I have an invitation to you. Next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, we're having a similar forum in Central East Austin. Blackshear Bridge, the community-based organization that I work with, Blackshear Neighborhood Development Corporation, and Guadalupe Neighborhood Development Corporation are having a similar forum at the Carver Library on Wednesday, May 27th at 5:30 social, 6 o'clock panel, and will be done by 7:30. So I've already I'm giving you this to some of you, and I want to invite the others to please come. We'll be talking not only about property tax solutions, and I wanted to also do a quick show of support for the challenge petition that they'll be talking about at City Council over the course of the next so let's have some clapping if you support their effort to do the challenge petition to get the commercial property value. So there's some feedback on that proposal. And I hope you can come. We'll also be talking about affordable housing and the need to build more affordable housing. And once that affordable housing is built, how to keep it affordable. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thanks so much. Cindy Valadez, who's the newest appointment to the
And
Central Health Board.
I would say on that, the legislature has given us the standard of market value. If we want a different standard, we need to get the legislature to change that. The other thing that we have in Texas is we don't allow or provide for assessment ratios. In a lot of other states, they have assessment ratios that, commercial property might be assessed at 90%, residential values are assessed at 40%. In Texas, we don't have assessment ratios. They're not allowed, and maybe that's something that you want to talk to the legislature about implementing maybe in Texas. It's something that I know they do in other states, but, is that good or bad for Texas? Yeah, it's a question, but it's something that might be worthy of discussion.
So I'm sorry, for clarification purposes. So you're saying that it's not allowed for the Central Appraisal District to actually look at a per square foot value when we know the dimensions of the lot and the zoning of the lot? You can't use that information to determine an appraised value for that lot?
It is not part of our model. It's not. I'm not saying that it is not allowed.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard you say that.
No.
Okay.
It's something that we're looking at and how we're going to
Well,
change
then my
it.
suggestion is that for those of you that are elected officials for taxing jurisdictions, that you pass a resolution or suggest to your appointees to the Central Appraisal District Board that their staff be directed to make sure that that kind of modification occurs. I live in East Austin. We've been undergoing gentrification for many, many years, and it did not make a difference whether or not we lived in a property that was zoned residential or commercial. Unfortunately for us, the city council made a unilateral decision several years ago to make anything along East Cesar Chavez automatically commercial, whether there was a residential use or a commercial use, both sides of the street, north and south. And that was done to, as far as I'm concerned, in the interest of encouraging development and commercialization of that quadrant, that corridor that would have led from the airport to downtown, now the convention center and city hall. But for those of us that live along Cesar Chavez and use that property for residential use, we have had to contend with your appraisers or those that are setting the appraised value of each property. We have had to contend with the residential use being equal to that of a commercial use. We have had to contend with you're not looking at the value of the land, which is more important than the improvement, which is the home. The home doesn't matter. The value of the land does. And now that we're looking at even more gentrification and even more greater expansion of the CBD East, because you can't go north, you can't go west, and you can't go south. The only place you can go is east. So that means our quality of life is the pits. Because my daughter, who supports us, my special needs daughter, and myself, is a state employee, barely making $35,000 a year. And we're watching her property taxes increase to an amount that she's driving Uber, she's working another job, and I'm doing whatever I can while I'm also taking care of my special needs daughter and serving on the Central Health Board because I care about the quality of life for our community. But you, as the Central Appraisal District, you all need to look at the lives we're living here. You're running us out of town. Your discussion, your comments, and I'm not being disrespectful, please understand that, but your comment is, well, look, we're going to look at the model, we're looking at this, we're looking at that. We've been gentrified out of our homes for 10 years. This is not anything new. If you're a person of color who has lived in East Austin, historic East Austin, you know what we have had to contend with. Earlier on, it was the University of Texas pricing us out of our homes. Now then it was the people from California coming in and buying our homes. Now what? Now those that are more empowered and wealthy and upwardly mobile and single have moved into our neighborhoods, are buying our homes. We're at risk of losing our schools because there aren't enough children sitting in the classrooms because the only people they're catering to are upwardly mobile, those that can afford, singles, who can afford to pay $250,000, $300,000 per 600 square foot unit, and you're taxing us basically at the same rate. 1 in a million pays less taxes than we do. That doesn't make any sense, okay? So I would suggest if you're an elected official, Travis County Commissioners Court, the City of Austin, please direct the Central Appraisal District to instruct its staff that they should have already developed a more equitable manner for looking at the value of land and for setting standards for what is comparable property. When I have a little junk 5x5 in the back for putting Gloria's wheelchair or whatever, that does not constitute a second unit. For them to use for me a comparable that has a double apartment unit in the back, you know, on a super built out property line that is the same lot size as mine. And that is what your appraisers are doing to us. So these are not things that we can go to an informal process and expect for anybody to listen or accommodate us, because they're not. So if you think they are, they're not. This is what is really happening. We're being forced out of our homes. You are not implementing something that I know you've got smart enough people to be able to accommodate it. If nothing else, I'm not a smart person necessarily, but I think I can go figure it out. What should be done, not because we want to increase the tax rate or because we need to have enough money for all the police, fire, all those various things that we produce. And we have to do, the services that have to be provided to the citizenry of Travis County and the city of Austin. We don't have a problem paying our fair share. We don't. But when we're forced to pay an unfair share, and we're at the bottom of the socioeconomic level, not necessarily living at below the poverty line, but we're at the bottom of the low socioeconomic level, struggling to support our quality of life, you're making it impossible for us to do.
Thank you, Cynthia. Marya, do you have a response to this? It does seem really out of whack if 1 million, which is a clear commercial property, is paying less in taxes than a homeowner in Cesar Chavez. Any comments or any remedies?
I would have to look at the data to see, because I really don't know. I don't know the values.
I go to the
so I would
tax and I'll talk to somebody, but I do appreciate all of you being here, and I thank you all for providing us an opportunity to come in and at least bear our concerns.
And this property protest that the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem talked about tonight is a very potent mechanism for trying to start to equalize things.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things the city really can do to make a difference.
One of the things that they did for us, and I thank you for doing that, you don't know how much we thank you for that, but one of the things that we do recognize is that we're in the part that's going up that you were talking about, because we were in that category. So,
yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I want to say, first of all, I really do appreciate you guys being here tonight and talking about this. But to be honest, guys, to be totally frank, I feel like Travis County is talking out of both sides of its mouth. You know, you guys keep talking about how you care about affordability and you're going to work on affordability. Well, one of the affordability issues that nobody wants to talk about is the fact that with the way Travis County has grown, it is a hardship for most families to have to go downtown to do things. It is actually an additional tax. You have to take time off work, you've got the gas, you've got to deal with your kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what does Travis County do? They come to us, they say, oh, we're going to work on taxes, and then they turn right around and they have a $300 million courthouse that they're going to put on the bond this November, and they completely throw out the North Corridor Plan and the Campo Plan, which they are part of, which shows how the population has grown and where the population is, and they insist that it's got to be downtown. So not only are you going to be paying a $300 million if you vote for this thing, but now we're going to make families once again have to go downtown in Travis County when 70% of the growth is north of the Austin city limit. 70%, and that's by Campo and North Corridor. And last month, in a meeting, Sarah Eckhart went on record as saying one of the main reasons why Travis County's got to do that is because all the law firms are downtown and we need to cater to lawyers. I mean, that's what she basically said. And we were all kind of floored that, you know, Travis County is coming to us and saying this about affordability, but then you're turning around and saying we have to build this courthouse and we have to build it somewhere where most of the population is going to have a hardship getting to the courthouse. So I would suggest, why don't you sell the property you have downtown, use that money, and go build it somewhere where it's cheaper and more people could get to it.
We actually did examine that, and this is a really important point you're raising, Mary. We looked at least 10 other locations, and even if the land was cheaper, the cost of building the courthouse, because the current courthouse is literally falling apart, the cost of building the new courthouse would be roughly the same. We are actually going out to get proposals for the private market, redeveloping the second half of that downtown block to lower the price of the courthouse. And part of the reason why the county moved so many of the county services to North Austin along Airport Boulevard was for that very reason, to make it easier for people to get to the tax assessor collector's office, to make it easier for people to get to car registrations, to make it easier for them to do all their county business. The majority of the consumer-oriented county business, except for the courthouse, was moved to that location along North Airport Boulevard, and that was one of the sites that we examined pretty extensively as a possible location for the courthouse. and it came out costing pretty close to that same amount. So we are actively pursuing other mechanisms for buying down the cost of the courthouse, because that's one of the fundamental jobs that the county has to do. We have to give people their day in court, and it is the foundation of our democracy, that people have a right to their day in court. So that's the struggle that we're facing, but we are really working hard to pinch pennies, and part of this whole forum and the work that we urged both the county and the city to do last year has resulted in this study, which could be the basis of the tax protest, to begin to change the system. So we are working on it. We're not going to change this overnight, but we are working hard on it, and I appreciate your comments. Ed, your question.
Thank you. I want to echo the earlier thank yous for taking the time to engage the community. It's always helpful. My question is pretty straightforward. In every year that I can remember, in all of the old appraisal notices that I could find, on the face of the notice was printed an estimated tax total, a grand total. That's not there this year. In the past, that was a quick reference as to what an individual might expect to pay at the end of the year in taxes, and it was also a reminder of how much the increases are upon us every year. You go back through 2 or 3 and you really get a grip on how rapidly things are going up. My question is, what was the motivation in not including an estimated tax total on this year's appraisal notice they're missing?
We were getting a lot of people sending us checks, paying based on that total amount, and it didn't matter how many times we put on it, this is not a statement, this is not a bill, we were still receiving a lot of checks in the amount that we put on that notice of appraised value. So we continue to still give you an estimate for each one of your taxing jurisdictions, but we're not putting the total on there so that hopefully we can stop receiving those tax payments prematurely.
This is an issue that I had tried to have bills, actually, were bills introduced, because that estimate is wrong. It's always going to be wrong. And at a time when the values are going up, it's going to be exaggerated. The school district is not going to change its tax rate because of the way the school finance system is set up. But the city and the county and et cetera have to calculate an effective tax rate, and then they can only go up a certain percent from there. So you know when values are going up quickly, that nominal tax rate is going to be coming down. So all they can put on the appraisal notice is last year's tax rate. You know that in most cases that's going to be too high. So your estimated tax, you may think is informative, but really it's exaggerated and it's not really useful. It's like having a clock that runs fast. You don't know what the real time is. You don't know what your real taxes are going to be until the budget hearings are over and the tax rates are set. That's where you have to go, is the budget hearings and the tax rates. And after that, then you'll know what your taxes are.
Thanks. So we'll have time for 2 more questions and we need to wrap up.
Well, I appreciate it. In fact, I'd like to. I appreciate that, and I understand that it's an estimate. I think that most people do. It's unfortunate some take it as a bill, but I do find it informative, and I would like to see it on the appraisal notice, whether it's precisely accurate or not.
Well, in fact, the same information that I say is inaccurate is still there. It's just not totaled for you.
I think part of the question for me was already answered. I was kind of curious why the base rates aren't more aggressively adjusted, with the understanding that, you know, based on the current market situation in Austin, that we know that incoming revenues will definitely be higher, and so you sort of dynamically adjust the base rates a little bit more. Because I feel like, yeah, I mean, just as everybody's expressed, my taxes have never gone down. I've been here 12 years, and I feel like one way to tackle the issue, which may not be as monumental as trying to get away from a market evaluation system, is to look at the base rate adjustment maybe a little bit more dynamically.
Well, there's actually 2 issues, which is market value basis for property taxes and who sets the rates and how. And you have elected officials who set a budget, know what the certified value is for the appraisal district, and then set the tax rate. So, as I said, if the question is the rate that's being applied to the value, go to them. If the question is why do we have a property tax system set on market value, I mean, of course, once upon a time, property was the basis for income and wealth, right? We don't live in that anymore. But in Texas in particular, we don't have a tax that's really related to your ability to pay. And that's what's underlying what a lot of people say is their taxes outstrip their ability to pay them. If we had a tax, like I mentioned earlier, personal income tax that's directly related to your ability to pay, we wouldn't have half of these
Right,
problems.
my question is more directed at the two taxing authorities that are here and about the base rate adjustments, because it's clear that revenues are increasing to the taxing authorities every year on year. I mean, it's very clear. And so I guess I'm a little bit confused on how the revenues and the projected budgets are actually matching up with increased revenues year on year.
Well, I will say, that's one of the conversations we have just begun at council, is to look at the budget requirements and to consider where we're going to set the tax rate for this year. And there are different proposals floating around there, but that's one of our most important responsibilities. And certainly in the last couple of years, the previous council took very seriously the fact that we were hearing from lots of constituents about rising costs, and we looked at the budget that the staff brought forward and cut programs, and not cut programs, but cut what we regarded as unnecessary to try to bring that tax rate down. But as this area grows, and so does its demand for services. As we have more and more people coming here, that puts an increase on hiring more police officers, more firefighters, more services, across the city. So what you see in new revenues often goes to increased services to serve those new residents. But thank you for the question, and I urge you to be involved and keep your eye on the budget process that's starting right now at City Council, and I imagine
also
maybe
at the county.
doing so at the county as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I won't take up much of your time. Thank you very much. My name is Erin Foster. I'm a resident of the City of Austin and Travis County. I appreciate the fact that you're here talking about an issue which I think we've kind of gotten off topic on, but I just want to make sure I'm clued in here so I can explain to my neighbors. Basically, the Formula One racetrack that we have, that got all those nice tax advantages, even if we didn't want it here, they have sued us, because we're paying the bill. They have sued us last year, and they're in court this year. Now, when we're talking about commercial properties, I want people to, I know everybody has complaints. Okay, two things in life you can guarantee: death and taxes. I don't know who said that, but it's true. So what I want people to hear is the Formula One racetrack, whether you wanted it here or not, you paid upfront tax abatements. As taxpayers, we gave them that, okay? Whether you agreed with it or not, it's already done. And AMD, HEB. What I'd like to see is a list of these companies that got these incentives to come here. And how many of them have sued, I don't mean just protested, I mean sued, Travis County Appraisal District. Because to me, that's like building something and paying for it all over again. And we're paying for it. We, the taxpayers, are paying for it. So that's just one example, but that's what makes me angry, because as long as they're not paying their fair share, we got to make up the difference. And to me, that's what I've gotten out of
I'll just be real quick, but as I mentioned a little earlier, we had a resolution before council last fall, and if you contact my office there, and I'll be glad to tell you what date that was on the agenda, but part of the backup information for that item does look at the city's incentives and the companies that the city has provided incentives to, and which ones have gone and protested their property tax valuations. Now, I don't think those ended up in district court, though I can't remember for sure, but they did. There were several companies among those that have received incentives from the city of Austin that have protested their commercial property tax valuations, and the resolution we were moving forward would have put some requirements in place, but it was not ultimately passed by the council. It was passed, but much weakened.
And it's my understanding now they do it every year.
Every year.
Every year. Circuit of America, HEB now is doing it every year.
Well, y'all, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming. I want to particularly thank my staff and the volunteers, the wonderful volunteers who helped out. If you were involved in any way, please stand up. And thanks again to our speakers. We're going to continue to work on this on many fronts, but if you think that the city should take action, please let them know. It will be on their agenda this Thursday, next Tuesday, and the following Thursday. Thank you again.